All right. Welcome back to another edition of the Nectar Blueprint Lessons with Legends, and we're gonna get through this today. A very important message on sleep, and sleep is just we're gonna walk through sleep, and more specifically, a lack of sleep, and what that lack of sleep does to the body. And then, of course, as we always do, drop some solutions to sleep. And I must apologize for ahead of time. We had a football game on Friday night that was just one of those classic high school football games. And what transpired was absolutely incredible. And I commend both teams in the aspects of how they played. I mean, each team played unbelievably well, and there always has to be a winner, right? So my point being is that they fought to the bitter end, and essentially fast forward to the fourth quarter, into the fourth quarter, and Elko High School was up 28-21, and Fallon came back and stuffed one in the end zone. They go for two, and the kid barely gets over, reaches over, and it's 29-28 with like 51 seconds to go. And so they're cheering, they're, seeing next weekend and where they're going to go and talking about it and all these types of things. Well, Elko gets the kickoff, runs back pretty decent. I think it was like 15-20 yard run back. So, there's a little excitement. But the clock is down. I think the quarterback ended up doing one or two plays and then spiked the ball to stop the clock. And then they had a double lateral play. So receiver catches the ball, double lateral. So hook and ladder type of concept. Those you guys don't know, football is where the receiver catches it, pitches it to somebody from the backfield that's coming up, and so they gain another bit of yards. And then as he gets hit, he passes it laterally or backwards to the next kid that was up. So they ended up getting like, I don't know, 20, 25, maybe 30 yards on that. And so, you could feel it. They did another out with the running back out of the backfield, and he gets another 10, 12 yards and out of bounds, and there's 7 seconds to go. They're on the 25-yard line, and a 42-yard field goal, and the sophomore punches a 42-yard field goal. He had all of 52, maybe even more of it. And so the stadium went crazy. And so I lost my voice. And it's a little raspy. It's a little worn down. Those of you who've heard podcasts from me before, I occasionally show up that way. Just because I love cheering and seeing these kids experience high school sports is the way they're designed to happen. So kudos to Elko. They're going to Las Vegas to play a team down there this weekend, and everybody's excited about that. So see if they can keep the postseason going. But no doubt, a lot of these kids are playing football, may have some sleep issues, and that's what we want to cover today. So one of the best statements that I've ever heard about sleep was, and I can't even remember where I heard it, but it was basically put that all of the evolution of man's ability to adapt through seasons and times, and I mean, you go back in history, just our kind of immediate history, going from a hunter gatherer scenario, and then adapting into a more civilized way where we were able to domesticate animals, and more of an agrarian society where we raised animals for protein sources, and then cultivated land to grow vegetables and fruits and all those types of things. The body adapts, and man evolves into different scenarios, into the industrial revolution, where the agrarian society kind of got busted up, and everybody moved to the suburbs to get a job and have a house. And dad goes away from running the farm to make a better living, so kids can have more opportunities, or maybe they have a nicer house, and the automobile comes around, so that we adapt. And the human being evolves based on its surroundings. So we go from fresh air and sunlight all the time to sitting in a factory potentially making widgets, whatever that may be, making stuff where we're not seeing daylight, so the body adapts. And then even fast forward from that into the tech revolution, where majority of people are sitting inside, and read another statistic that we need 80% of the daylight in order to be very healthy, get the vitamin D that we want. And most people are now inside and only seeing the daylight for 2% of the day. And so we know that has an impact on the body, and the body is evolving and it's changing. And this is where healthcare really needs to step in, and has over the years, to be able to come up with potential solutions for the body not adapting well in its environment and starting to have some issues, and disease states and chronic issues start to develop. And when we talk about all the evolution, all the changes in healthcare and things like that, one thing, and this is back to the statement that I heard, and it made so much sense. One thing that the body has never, ever been able to get away from is sleep. And you look in nature, it's similar. Animals will just curl up when they need some sleep to recover and sleep. Now, despite the fact that a mountain lion might be, coming in quick on them, they can get a deep sleep and then be able to go into action, whatever they may need to do. But we haven't evolved away from sleep. So my whole point here is that sleep is no doubt really important. Wouldn't you agree? Now, the Nectar Blueprint, and I'm going to clear my throat. If I can mute it for a second. The Nectar Blueprint is kind of a combination of the podcast, for lack of better words. Why we're here doing this is to bring on people, experts in the field, lessons of legends, to teach not only those that are inclined in the general public, but also doctors. And so we're going to cover some stuff today as to the importance of sleep, which I don't think anybody would argue in their right mind. However, as a healthcare practitioner, I don't know a lot of doctors that are even asking about sleep when it comes to somebody seeking their care. So somebody comes in and like, I'm not feeling good. This is breaking down. Systems and processes are not working. And we're looking at blood work. We may be doing measurements. We use things like NOE in our office, dark field analysis. NOE gives us 23 different biomarkers based on resting breath work, like a spirometry, if you will. And so we gather all this data. But if we're not talking about sleep and what their sleep cycle is looking like, we're missing probably one of the most vital components of our overall health. And I'm going to make a case for that for today. So again, lay public, if you're listening to this, the aspects of your sleep need to be critically looked at. Now, we have gadgets that we can put on our wrists, on our chests, and our, there's even beds nowadays that track sleep, because it's that important to know how you are sleeping. Not only getting good rest for a solid amount of time, okay, but the deep sleep, REM sleep, and light sleep all have different components and all relate to how a body thrives. So sleep, if we're not getting it, and not getting it regularly, which happens in our town because we have miners, bless their hearts, they work their asses off. And these miners have to go on swing shifts. So they'll work 5 days and they'll go on to 4 nights and then work 5 nights and 4 days. It's just kind of a swing shift. And so there are times that they may not, especially during the winter months, may not even see daylight. And their sleep's all messed up. So if they're working nights and trying to shift back to days, the body's like, the circadian rhythms are all off. And the body's like, what are we doing? Trying to figure this out. Are we sleeping today? Are we sleeping tonight? And then anybody that's ever worked a night shift knows that when you come off of nights, you got to stay up almost 20 hours, try to cheat the sleep so then you can go to bed normally, say at 8, 9 o'clock at night, so you're not up all night like you trained your body the previous days. So I don't think anybody would disagree that that has a dramatic impact. Okay. So reading specifically out of the textbook of Clinical Nutrition and Functional Medicine, Volume 1 by Alex Vasquez, one of my favorite books. And I remember right out of chiropractic school, I was like, I need to get that book. And couldn't afford it. It was very expensive. And now I've bought like two of them. It's like 1,400 pages total. But I bought 2 of them. I have it on my phone. So I downloaded it. I found it on iBooks there. And so I download it, and then I have the paper version. I like to do that a lot. But to the tune of like $289 a copy. And so, yeah, and when you're starting out in business, I was like, I'd really like to get that, but it wasn't a priority. We gotta kind of do other things to other bills to be paid, other things to get done. Okay, but one of my favorite books in this book is my go-to just as a reminder of things I could miss. Now, I have one of these brains that I can remember an incredible amount of stuff. When it comes to health and understanding physiology and anatomy, I have this uncanny, like almost picture brain where I can come back and access that at any time. But I like to come back and just refresh on different things and come back and be like, okay, is there any components of this that I missed before that I can add now to, because I got the baseline down and kind of look at it and go from there. And so this is one of those books that doctors, if you're listening to this, you do not have that book, you need to, it's a must have to be on your shelf. And it's a must have to not be on your shelf, but probably on your desk, in a chair close by. That when I'm thinking about a condition that we're working with, or something's not adding up or working right, I can come back to this and be like, well, let's look at this. And so a lot of health now is just putting together all of these different pieces and looking at it. So like I said, if somebody's got a thyroid off and we're not looking at their sleep, well, that's superficial. We can medicate a thyroid. You got hypothyroidism, medicate a thyroid, and try to get the thyroid acting the way that we want, but we're neglecting so many different things. Okay, so we come back to this book, and I want to read you some things out of it because it's really important. He's got a little green box here on page 199. Says the importance of sleep, regulation of sleep-wake cycles, and the regular satisfaction of sleep needs are important for the preservation of immune function, intellectual performance, emotional stability, and the internal regulation of the body's inflammatory tendency. So sleep is important for the preservation of immune function, intellectual performance, emotional stability, and the internal regulation of the body's inflammatory tendencies. So let's flip that. If sleep is disturbed, we have decreased immune function, decreased intellectual performance, decreased emotional stability, decreased in internal regulation of our inflammatory reaction, which means that we're more inflamed. And I'll build a case for this as well. Okay, sleep deprivation causes a systemic inflammatory response manifested objectively by increases in high sensitivity C-reactive protein. Furthermore, sleep deprivation creates a pro-inflammatory condition. Sleep deprivation has been proven to impair intellectual functioning, emotional state, and immune functions. And then all the references, okay? All the different references on page 199. So if you wonder if this has come from good scientific data, it is. And so a lot of different references on this, but I don't think anybody would ever disagree with that. We know people that have had a bad night's sleep, commonly come back to the fact of like, yeah, I can't think straight. I don't feel good. If you do it too long, maybe you get sick. You feel worn down. Okay. But the biggest factor that I wanted to bring it into all this is the immune suppression through an inflammatory process that is going on in that body, in all of our bodies. So this inflammatory process, and we know inflammation is associated with all chronic disease. Okay. So somebody, and I love this because it's like it, you can throw, well, anyways, on my Instagram, I scroll through and I get bombarded with just, you gotta have this and you have that, and this is for longevity, and you be doing all these types of things. And so we go down to food and supplements and reducing stress, and all these types of things are great. And you could spend thousands of dollars a month on nootropics, on energy boosters, mitochondrial health, overall red blood cell health, making sure that you're not getting molds, and looking at coffee that is mold free, and coffee with like Dave Asprey's Danger Coffee now that's got the fulvic acid, and you're getting all these good things. We can spend money on all these different things. You'd be getting adjusted with your chiropractor, which you should be, and working on your spine health and all these other things. You're exercising on a regular basis. You seek out organic foods that are free of pesticides and chemicals. You got grass-fed and grass-finished meats, and you spend all this money to not be inflamed, to not expose yourself to all these chemicals, and then you fuck up your sleep, and you're inducing one of the most horrific inflammatory responses that you could ask for in your body. Okay, so sleep's important, yes? So out of everything to protect your sleep, more than protecting your food, protecting your water, protecting your exercise, your meditation, your supplementation routine, I think I can make a case for you on that. So sleep really important. I'm taking drinks of water to keep my buzzy throat at bay. So the association between poor sleep and a heightened IL-6 response to acute stress was observed and linked to immune dysregulation, including depressive symptoms, perceived stress, and loneliness. Conclusions, findings add to the growing evidence for poor sleep as an independent risk factor for poor mental health and physical health. Older adults may be particularly vulnerable to effects of sleep disturbances due to significant age-related changes in both sleep and inflammatory regulation. Okay, so lack of sleep causing inflammation. What's the cause of heart disease? Inflammation. C-reactive protein, more specifically homocysteine. And I'm going to bring homocysteine into this. Okay, there is a specific gene mutation. Okay, there's a specific gene mutation that we've only known about for a little while. And that gene mutation has a significant impact on homocysteine. And when you talk to any cardiologist, any medical doctor, any healthcare professional, chiropractor, naturopath, when you mention homocysteine, they're going to be like, oh, that's more of a predictor than cholesterol or C-reactive protein as far as heart health goes. And if you can dump homocysteine, then you're dumping the major risk factor for coronary artery disease and potentially a massive coronary event, heart attack. So homocysteine, bad, all right, really bad. And we know that to be true, okay? So, but there's a gene mutation, simple, that I've read stories and read literature that it's estimated to be around 20% of the population has this gene mutation, okay? And we don't know. Maybe more has it, okay? We have to think along those science always evolves. What we know today is definitely way more than we knew 10 years ago. And what we know 5 years from now would be exponentially more. Okay, so it could be potentially more than this. All right, but homocysteine and this gene mutation are directly linked. So it gets a little scary. In the absence of, and the gene mutation is MTHFR, okay, which a lot of people call it the mother egger gene because it messes up a ton of stuff. But in the absence of this MTHFR, a methyl group is not generated. Okay, so anybody that knows about this gene mutation is they are not able to methylate B vitamins specifically, but they're not, the methylation capacity of somebody with this gene mutation is not there. So the methyl group is not generated to convert homocysteine, a naturally produced hormone under stress, inflammation, part of our immune response. But get this, homocysteine does not convert to methionine because of the lack of this methyl group. This results in a buildup of homocysteine. So instead of breaking homocysteine down, if you don't have the gene mutation, homocysteine goes through the roof, contributing to human disease such as insomnia. Supplementation with folate and vitamin B12 can help compensate for mutations related reduction of the MTHFR enzymatic activity. Okay, I disagree with B9. B9 is kind of synthetically made. All right, so that continues to get in the literature, but B12 for sure. So a methylated B12, honestly, is a simple fix for these people with the gene mutation and insomnia or sleep disturbances. All right. Bottom line, if doctor, you're not testing for this MTHFR gene mutation, you may be trying to get people B vitamins and they're not methylating well and they're not reducing homocysteine, which everything that you're trying to do for this person and reduce inflammation and help chronic disease is related to this gene. Okay, so it's something that we have to think about. And if we're not asking about sleep, but one of the triggers for me when I'm talking about sleep with people is like, hey, how are you sleeping? Okay, tell me, can you fall asleep? Yeah, I'm really tired. Okay, but then you wake up. Yes, and there's some components to that. There's a lot of components to this. And then you wake up in the middle of the night and it's hard to go back to sleep. Okay, or you can't fall asleep, but when you do fall asleep, it's for short periods of time and you wake up tired. There's different components to this. But bottom line, we identify sleep disturbances. And if we don't know if they're part of this gene mutation, it's got to be explored, does it not? Because homocysteine is going through the roof. All right, because of the absence of the methyl group that's necessary to convert homocysteine to methionine. Okay, so this is a huge component. Now, there's other components of this as well, as far as sleep goes. And we're going to give you some hacks, come back full circle, be some things that we can do to improve sleep. And I've taught on this quite a bit, and a lot of you know these things. It's just a matter of putting them in place. But I love it on page 200 of Alex Vasquez, Dr. Vasquez's book. It goes through a lot. And I'm going to cover some of them because, like, again, I have 90% of these down is what I teach. When I came across other couple ones, I'm like, hey, that's good data. It's really good data. But again, if you're this 20% that has an MTHFR gene, didn't even know about it, get tested, you take a methylated form of vitamin B12, you solve your sleep disturbances. Now, you can mess them up with other things for sure. Okay, but you also solve the homocysteine issue, which is running rampant in your system, which could be causing all sorts of immune dysfunction, all sorts of joint pain, all sorts of mood disturbances, and the list goes on. Okay, so other components that we got to look at. How many know of somebody that's on the CPAP? Okay, so if we're on a CPAP, and CPAPs have been coined as like life-saving, and no doubt they are, but it's like taking a medicine for the essential problem. So people are like, well, I got apnea. I go, apnea is not your problem. So when we look at sleep, and they're like, well, how is that not my problem? I did this sleep study, and they showed that I was crashing on oxygen every 20 minutes, and my body was trying to wake up. Okay, and that's what people do. They snore and or gasp for air when they're sleeping, and the body's trying to wake them up to get some oxygen back into the system. All right. But there's some crucial components when it comes to apnea that need to be looked at, have been dramatically missed. And those components are the structure of the cervical spine and turkey neck. We're going to call it turkey neck. What is turkey neck? Well, they're excessive folds because of excessive fat gain and weight gain that start to close off the airway. So unfortunately, sometimes we have to have the conversation with somebody who's like, one of the best things that you could do for your sleep is to lose some weight. I mean, you call me fat, doc. Well, no. But are you? I'll just get some numbers or start to run 42% body fat. Yeah, okay, now I can call you fat. But don't take it personal because we have peptides and other things like lipo shots and things like that are all natural to help you lose some weight. So let's go. Okay, so wouldn't you love to be a leaner version of yourself? Get rid of your CPAP machine and get more oxygen in your system and reduce potentially the inflammatory markers that go with sleep disturbances, because that machine is no doubt keeping you from getting to a deep sleep. Now, people say, well, I get used to it. Yeah. Okay. We don't ever get used to a machine with a mask and strapping it on. That's getting used to misery. However, the other component that we need to look at too on all of this is the structure of the cervical spine. Okay, so we have the folds that start to suffocate. Okay, this is why when people lean back to go to sleep, those folds kind of and can suffocate. They close off the airway. Okay, so we have to have honest conversations with people. Okay, if you're not willing to lose weight or not willing to look at the fact that you may be overweight, then kudos to you. Go down the path of Ambien and CPAP machine and see how that works for you. But if you're willing to come to terms with like, okay, I got extra folds in here, I get that. It's not just because I'm old, it's because I'm actually stuffing fat in places that I shouldn't be stuffing fat because I have nowhere else to stuff the fat. And there are some basic biological markers that I can look for to be able to test that. And even better, there's some biotech that I can use to actually get me into a better place. Okay, then we're moving. I mean, we can see 30 to 60 pounds loss with semaglutide, a peptide, in 10 to 12 weeks with people. Do you bet their sleep improves? Absolutely. It's absolutely incredible. And people are like, doc, I have more energy. How you sleeping? Oh my gosh. Sleep like a baby. That's what we want to see. Okay, but we cannot also neglect the cervical spine and the structure of the cervical spine. Okay, how does the cervical spine get out of normal alignment? Okay, and doctors, if you're actually questioning, is there a normal alignment for the cervical spine? Absolutely there is. It's published in Spine multiple times. So there's an ideal ideal position for the cervical spine to be in. From the side, lateral view on an x-ray, there should be an ideal curve is 42 degrees. And we know this to be true in the literature. 34 degrees is the average. And forward head posture, which is how much head posture goes forward from the shoulders, should be at 0. Okay, so there's different postural markers that we can look at that. A lot of good doctors that do a specific technique called CBP, chiropractic biophysics, will measure from T1 to C1. Okay, and those should align. All right, I know a lot of physical therapists that look at posture and say like the AC joint or the midpoint of the glenohumeral joint, which is shoulder, up to the external auditory meatus and how that head, where does it sit from there? And we measure from there. It's okay. I like x-ray for measuring it because it's a lot more detailed. But bottom line, if somebody's had a life that has impacted their spine, now everybody's on phones, these phones, and got their heads down. We're looking forward. There's a lot of issues that can come up with this. Okay, so forward head posture is now an epidemic. We know that to be true. Or we've had outside forces act on us, car crashes, slips, falls, athletic events, activities. I know I did my fair share. That can change the position of the cervical side, specifically from a good posture to bad posture, good structure to bad structure. There's so many things that a bad structural position of the neck can be associated with it. But specifically when we're talking about sleep, it closes down airways. Okay, so if my head is dramatically forward and the cervical curve is either completely lost or even reversed in certain aspects of it, going the opposite direction, it literally shortens up the muscles. So those muscles don't have the travel, so to speak, to be able to open the trachea. So we know in good posture that we can, when we bring our head back into a really good posture, if you're sitting there in forward head posture, that those muscles get to contract better and open up the airway. Okay, so if somebody's had car crashes, multiple car crashes, their neck has been damaged, that's another component of sleep and sleep apnea. Okay, so I have to address these things because they're all really, really, really big components of overall sleep. And we see this quite often in our office. People don't often come in with sleep apnea or sleep disturbances, but they'll come in with headaches or neck pain, numbness and tingling in the arms. And what do? We evaluate the cervical spine and find out that they have a bad position of their neck, and our desired clinical outcome is to transform that neck posture into a healthier posture. And then, oh yeah, by the way, doc, I'm like not using my CPAP machine anymore. I'm sleeping tons better. Good. It's because your airways are open back up. Now lose some weight. No, I wouldn't say that unless they need to lose some weight. But now lose some weight, take those folds out of the way, and boom, you're breathing. Okay. But you know what, Mr. Smith, what you're also doing is reducing your inflammatory response. Because better sleep, we know, decreases your risk factors for cardiovascular disease, like homocysteine, C-reactive protein, interleukin 6. Okay, so we go down this path of like, this is a good thing, meaning a good sleep. Okay, so we're laying a foundation. We get this probably without a doubt. Okay, there's a couple things that we need to look at. One, we need to be asking as doctors, we need to be asking how their sleep's going. Okay, if it's disrupted is one of the predominant things that our body has never migrated or gotten away from through evolution. Okay, through generation after generation, we still need sleep. Okay, so we need that sleep because it's vital. Vital things the body doesn't evolve away from. And so we need this. And sleep is really, really, really important part of a health transformation for people. So if you're not getting that sleep, that patient's not getting any sleep, what should we be looking for? One, we should be testing for the MTHFR gene mutation. Two, cervical spine, CPAP, are they doing things like that? And weight are all going to come into play. Okay, so we made a foundation for that. Now, some other tools to help improve sleep. Again, we got to look at all these things. Most people don't have a consistent sleep schedule. So these are simple things that we can teach people, is get into a consistent sleep schedule. What's your sleep schedule like? Okay. Doctors, do you even run a sleep workshop? Might be something to think about. A sleep workshop where actually, hey, come to learn how to sleep better. Okay, it opens up some doors. Maybe they have the insomnia from the MTHFR gene, and you can test them for that and help that out. Pretty cool. Okay, so my kids, I tell them, hey, we got a cutoff time for bright lights. Now it's really hard because it's funny. My kids blame our homeschooling as to their difficulties in school sometimes, and they do really well. Okay, they do really well. It's A's and ones of A's and B's. They do really well, but when they so we homeschooled up until 9th grade, and we gave them the option at 9th grade to go to high school if they want to have that experience. I think it's cool. Some of you may be like, "Oh, that's stupid." Well, we keep an eye on it, and they've learned probably more in their time with us prior to high school than they will all the way through high school. And I get that. Could they take some? And they do. They jump into college classes. We're just keeping these things going. But they had that decision. 2 out of the 3 so far have decided that one. The other one hasn't had that option yet. She probably will. She wants to go to school now. Like, I want to go to school. Like, you're in school. But one of the things they weren't keyed up on was this whole Chromebook. So they get into school and they pick up their Chromebook and they're like, what do I do with this? Because we've never taught them off a computer. Yes, they know how to use a computer, but communications, emails, all that type of stuff was like, oh my gosh, this is where teachers are dropping assignments. And then I could get an email when I'm not in class and need and be responsible for that. And so there was this, evolution for them to be able to get into those things and be able to like, hey, I got to do this. I got to do this. So immediately they go into evenings staring in front of a Chromebook, emailing, researching, doing homework, all those types of things. So they have blue lights. So we have to set parameters. Now, sometimes those parameters are hard because it's like, Dad, I got to get this stuff done. Or did you procrastinate? Yeah, most likely. Okay, you procrastinated so long, but now you got to get it done. You got to get it done. So then we're actually exposing the blue light. So blue light is an essential that we have to curb. It's not always going to be perfect, but you got to curb it. Okay, so we've even done, our kids all have the ability to change the color of their light bulbs. So we'll have a red light that even on a timer. So the blue lights go away. All right. But then they also have options to stimulate with red light therapy, like red light saunas, red light, like juves, things like that, to be able to get daylight during the dark hours, everything like that. So rule of thumb number two is make sure we're not getting any stimulants. Reduce the stimulants, caffeine, nicotine for adults, caffeine, nicotine, even aspartame, okay, which is a neurotoxin, aspartate. So gums, you'll find it in gums. You'll find it as natural flavors. There's aspartame is all over the place, still all over the place. If you have some questions, look that up. But that's a stimulant as well. Okay. Make sure you don't exercise too late. Those of you that like, hey, I work all day, I need to go. That's fine. Early afternoon exercise, but exercising right before bed can create all sorts of, because you're releasing enkephalins and endorphins and things like that. Okay. So, roughhousing. We had for a time, we were doing wrestling practice late at night and then trying to get a bite to eat. My body's charged. It's hard to fall asleep. Okay. Even though wearing yourself out is a good pattern too. Okay. Um, find a place where you can get a ritual for sleep. This is one of the key factors. And then what I mean by ritual is like you do the same thing every night. Okay. At a certain time, things start to wind down. You have a cup of tea. Maybe you have a glass of wine that can disrupt sleep. But just a little side note on alcohol. You got to minimize alcohol too. But maybe there's a tea, there's some music, there's some reading, there's some low stimulus stuff that you do. Just keep doing that routine. Get into that routine. Okay. So just create a pattern. Okay. Others that, a little side note, others that fall asleep and wake up within 4 to 6 hours, you may consider a nighttime snack right before you go to bed. A very low glycemic snack, not high in proteins. Okay. But there is something called nocturnal hypoglycemia where your blood sugar in your body's waking up. So some of you wake up because you're not breathing. Some of you wake up because you have high levels of homocysteine. But others of you are waking up because you're hypoglycemic, low blood sugar. So doing something that's got a little bit of fat, a little bit of complex carbohydrates in the evening is totally good. Alex Vasquez in his book recommends like apples with a nut butter. Totally fine. Totally fine. You want to avoid things like protein shakes, protein powders, things like that, pre-digested aminos. Just because they reduce tryptophan. And that's a whole nother mechanism. But when you reduce tryptophan actually is a little component in turkey, right? Everybody knows tryptophan on Thanksgiving Day. That's why you get tired, but it has a component of converting to melatonin and helping that. But also most amino acids are derived from neurotransmitters, believe it or not, like dopamine, glutamine, norepinephrine, which are all excitatory stimulators in nature. Okay. Other things you can consider that are really good. Stay away from like B vitamins in the evening, but things like calcium and magnesium, and specifically magnesium threonate, is really good for helping get into that sleep cycle. Okay. Now, some of you, if you have you can't live out in the country and have like, a quiet room, create a quiet room. Use some earplugs, window covers, Some of you are stacked with people that snore all night. And so that's something you're going to have to address. Maybe that person's dealing with sleep apnea. Maybe it's a MTHFR gene mutation. Okay. And then we can talk about supplements on top of all of that as well, which we use in the office, little versions of um, 5-HTP, which is a hydroxytryptophan, little bits of melatonin if we need to. But I'm really excited to share the aspects of this MTHFR gene mutation for 20% of you that may be dealing with it, that we get you a methyl version of a B vitamin that can solve the homocysteine process. So not only good for sleep, all right, but good for transforming the overall inflammatory process in the body. Okay. So a little long journey for doctors and the lay public, but some really good things to lay a foundation for why we need sleep, why we've never evolved away from sleep. And if we don't get sleep, how that breaks down our immune system through an inflammatory process or interleukin 6, C-reactive protein, homocysteine if you're not careful, and if you're not methylating. Other aspects that close down our airways that can lead to CPAPs or sleep apnea, like cervical structure, okay, and fat rolls. And so some great moves. If nothing else, you walk out with one of these components that you can apply in your world, even tonight, then it's a win. It's a total win. And improving your sleep, as I mentioned earlier, is probably going to improve your health more than any food that you can eat, any chemicals that you could reduce, any stress reduction techniques. Making sure your sleep is vital. So it's vital. So we might as well protect it and put a routine around it. All right, that's all I got for you today on the Nectar Blueprint, Lessons with Legends, talking about sleep, specifically insomnia and how that impacts your health. So hopefully you learned something. We've had a little lag of bringing some good people on. If you jump on Facebook, you'll find the video aspect of this podcast in one of our groups and on YouTube. You can obviously find, if you're listening to this podcast, you found it somewhere, but it's anywhere. Anywhere you want a podcast, you can find us online at the Nectar IV or Elko Chiropractor, RubyMountainChiro.com. We are all over the place. You can message me on Facebook, but if you'd like to see somebody come on this podcast that you feel is a legend in healthcare, I'd love to interview some people. I love talking. I love teaching, but I also love interviewing people and learning from more from there. So we do have a lineup. Busy seasons for a lot of people. There is a lineup that's kind of kicked out there. We're going to continue to bring more people on, and that'll be a part of this podcast here real soon. But as for now, it's going to be me teaching you a little bit about insomnia and health. That's all I got for you today. We'll talk to you next week.